Assalamu alaikum, students. So today we will discuss something about the anatomy. So today we will focus on the spinal cord. Some important points and MCQs. We will discuss some important points and the MCQs. Now the picture here is showing three types of the neurons: unipolar, bipolar, and multipolar neurons. Unipolar, you know that a single process comes out from the unipolar neuron and it divides into two branches. One acts as dendrite and the other acts as an axon. So the site of unipolar neuron is the dorsal root ganglia, only site in the body where a unipolar neuron is present is the dorsal root ganglia. So the second one type is the bipolar neuron, and you can see that two processes are exiting from the cell body, central cell body. So bipolar neurons, these types of neurons are present in the special senses receptors. So they act as special senses receptors, that is in the retina, in the olfactory epithelium, in the taste buds, and in the hearing cells. Now, third one is the multipolar neuron, and you can appreciate that it has got a one axon, single axon, and multiple dendrites. One axon and multiple dendrites. So most of the cells, Purkinje cells, pyramidal cells, cells of the anterior horn, cells of the posterior horn of spinal cord, they are of the multipolar neuron type. Now next is so again, this is this picture is showing the various types of the neurons: unipolar, single process arising from the cell body; bipolar, one axon and one dendrite arising from the cell body; and then the multipolar, multiple processes arising. Now, their location and examples. So, MCQ can come that the type of the type of the neuron present in the bipolar unipolar neuron are present in the, so the options will be given, multiple options will be given, that is the retina, sensory ganglia of cochlea, sensory ganglia of vestibular nerve, and pyramidal cells and posterior root ganglia of spinal nerves. So the correct answer is the posterior root ganglia. Okay, so starting from the spinal cord. So spinal cord is the part of the central nervous system, and it extends from the upper part of the upper border of the C1 vertebrae to the L1 lower border of body of the L1 vertebrae in adults. So in children, it ends at the lower border of L3 vertebrae. So this is also an important point and often asked in MCQs. And the lower terminal part of the spinal cord is termed as the conus medullaris, which is a cone-shaped part. Now, the lumbar puncture lumbar puncture is a frequent procedure obtained for done for the to obtain the samples of cerebrospinal fluid for various diagnostic and therapeutic purposes. Now, the needle is introduced uh, into the subarachnoid space, which is surrounding the spinal cord. And during this introduction of the needle, we have to pass through several layers, starting from the skin, superficial fascia, then supraspinous ligament, then interspinous ligament, then ligamentum flavum, then areolar tissue containing the internal vertebral venous plexus, then the dura mater, and then arachnoid matter. So if you make mnemonic of these, we can have SSS, triple S, I, L, A, D, A. So LADI, LADI. So triple S LADI is the, okay. If you go with the with its the okay. Now the first is the skin, then the superficial fascia, then the supraspinous ligament, triple S, then I is the interspinous ligament, then the ligamentum flavum, and then areolar tissue containing the interval, containing the internal vertebral venous plexus, then dura mater, and then in the end, the arachnoid matter. So this is a picture showing the structures, the layers which we have to pass, which the needle have to pass in order to get into the subarachnoid space. So skin, superficial fascia, then the spinous ligament, SSS, then interspinous ligament, supraspinous ligament, then interspinous ligament, and then the ligamentum flavum L, and then dura mater, then the epidural space containing the loose connective tissue and the vertebral venous plexus, and then we have the dura mater and the arachnoid matter. So then comes the subarachnoid space. This is the dura mater, the one shown in the dark color, blue, this brown color, and the arachnoid matter is shown in the blue color. So the dura mater and arachnoid matter, they are not separated. They have a potential space, but there is no actual space between them. So the next space is the subarachnoid space. So needle is going into the subarachnoid space. Now, when you pass the needle, how you know that you have entered the dura mater? So this is very important point. The dura mater is tough protective membrane surrounding the spinal cord and brain. When the needle passes through the dura mater and enters the subarachnoid space, the clinician may hear a soft, it may hear a soft pop or a click sound as the needle punctures the dura, and you feel a resistance then, when you push the needle further into the space, there is a sudden loss of resistance when you pass through the dura mater. So that is how you know about the that the needle have entered the subarachnoid space, and also the CSF fluid is coming into the needle. So another important question in usually asked in MCQs. Now this is the relationship between the vertebral levels and the spinal segments. Now the formula is that in the upper cervical region, C1 to C4, the same segment is present in front of the same vertebral body. So in case of third cervical vertebrae overlies the third cervical segment. Now in the lower cervical part, that is the C5 to C7, you have to add 1. So fifth cervical vertebrae overlies the sixth cervical segment. You have to add 1 to know which segment is lying in front of uh, this vertebrae, in this vertebrae, at the level of this vertebrae. Now the upper thoracic region T1 to T6, you have to add 2. So fourth thoracic vertebra lies over the sixth thoracic segment, and lower thoracic region, that is T7 to T9, add 3 to the number of the vertebrae to get the underlying spinal segment. Now the example is the ninth thoracic vertebrae overlies the 12th thoracic segment. Then we have got the T10 level. T10 vertebral level, thoracic vertebral level, the segments of the spinal cord lying in front of it are the L1 and L2 segments. At the level of T11, L3, L4 segments lie, and at the level of T12 vertebrae, S5 to S L5 to S1 segments lie. And at the level of L1 vertebrae, as I have told you before, that the the spinal cord, it ends at the lower level of the lower border of the L1 vertebrae. So from S2 to coccyx segment, S2, S3, S4, S5, and the coccyx segment, they lie against this vertebrae. So the conus medullaris region, they lie along this vertebrae. If we look at internal structure of the spinal cord at different levels. So this is another important MCQ point, that the shape of the transverse section of spinal cord varies at different level, and the amount of the gray matter and white matter also varies along the different regions of the spinal cord segments. Now, the spinal cord is transversely oval in the cervical region, round in the thoracic region, round to oval in the lumbar region, and round in the sacral region. The relative amount of gray matter and white matter and the shape and size of gray columns, they vary at different levels of the spinal cord. Now, the amount of gray matter to be seen at a particular level can be correlated with the mass of the tissue to be supplied. It is therefore greatest in the region of cervical and lumbar enlargements. And so cervical, the spinal cord shows two enlargements, one at the region of in the region of cervical vertebrae and the other in the region of lumbar vertebrae. So these enlargements are due to increased number of the gray matter in it, which supplies the limbs. And the amount of white matter, it undergoes progressive increase from the lower part of the spinal cord to the upper part. Now this is because progressively more and more ascending fibers are added to the upper levels of the cord, and the number of descending fibers decrease as lower levels of cord are reached, as some of them terminate in each segment. So the gray matter increases in the enlargements of the spinal cord, that is the cervical and lumbar, and this thickness is due to the increase in the gray matter, and the white matter is more in the upper segments of the spinal cord, that is in the cervical segment it is more. You can see here, this is a picture. Now you can observe here that the lumbosacral region and the cervical region, the gray matter, while in the thoracic region, the gray matter is less. But the white matter, as we go up in the spinal cord, the white matter increases, and its amount is more in the cervical region. Region. Talking about the ascending tracts and descending tracts, first of all, the ascending tracts. As you know, there are the lateral spinothalamic system, which carries the pain and temperature through lateral spinothalamic tract, and the anterior spinothalamic system, that which carries the pressure and the crude touch. And then the dorsal column tract, which carries the fine touch and the discriminatory touch and vibration and proprioception, and then the spinocerebellar system tracts, which carry the unconscious proprioception to the cerebellum. Now the first order neuron of the all these ascending tracts, they lie in the dorsal root ganglia. So this is the common thing. So all the first order neurons of the ascending tracts have got three order neurons. That is the first order, second order, and the third order. So all the tracts, their first order neurons are in the dorsal root ganglia. While the second order neuron is mostly in the posterior horn, but of the dorsal column tract, in case of dorsal column medial lemniscal tract, it is in the medulla. Then the second order, these are the second order, and the third order neurons are mostly in the ventroposterolateral nucleus of the thalamus, but spinocerebellar system, they tracts, they go into the cerebellum. So most of the third order neurons are in the thalamus, but the spinocerebellum, they goes to the spinocerebellar tract, they goes to the cerebellum. So they do not ascend to the thalamus. And then all these sensations are carried to the post-central gyrus of the cerebral cortex. So, uh, to localize where the lesion is occurring, the second order neurons of both the tracts of dorsal funiculus and spinothalamic tract decursate. Now, you know the second order neurons of both the tracts they decursate means they go to the opposite side. But the level of decursation is different. Fasciculus gracilis and cuneatus decursate at medulla, while the spinothalamic tract, they decursate at the spinal cord level. So this is the important point, and MCQ usually asked. Now here the spinal cord lesions cause ipsilateral loss of fine. So in case of the decursation, so in the spinal cord lesions, ipsilateral loss of the fine senses and contralateral loss of pain and temperature occurs. A lesion anywhere in the brainstem or higher will cause contralateral loss of both senses. So this is a great localizing sign. In the spinal cord, the one sense, the fine touch and the vibration sense is lost on the ipsilateral side, while the pain and temperature sense is lost on the contralateral side. While if the lesion is in the brainstem or higher centers, the both the senses, they are lost on the contralateral side of the body. Okay, so talking about the spinocerebellar tracts, there are two spinocerebellar tracts, posterior spinocerebellar tract, anterior spinocerebellar tract, and another one which is known as the cuneo-cerebellar tract. So there are three cerebellar tracts which are carrying the unconscious proprioception from the body to the cerebellum. So now there are three tracts from where the senses are the sense of the proprioception is coming in these three tracts. The posterior spinocerebellar tract carries unconscious proprioception from individual muscles of the lower limb. So again, this is an MCQ which is asked, that the posterior spinocerebellar tract, it carries the proprioception from individual muscles of the lower limb, while the anterior spinocerebellar tract, it carries the unconscious proprioception from the lower limb as a whole. So this is the difference between the anterior spinocerebellar tract and the posterior spinocerebellar tract. Third one is the cuneo-cerebellar tract. So they are equivalent to the upper limb equivalent of the posterior spinocerebellar tract, which carries the proprioception, sense of proprioception from the individual muscles of the upper limb. Okay, now there are disorders of equilibrium, that is inability to maintain the equilibrium of the body while standing or while walking. It is referred to as ataxia. So it may occur due to two reasons. There can be sensory ataxia or there can be motor ataxia. Now, you should know the difference. Sensory ataxia is due to damage to the sensory pathways, that is the dorsal column tract, while the motor ataxia is due to damage to the motor control centers, that is the cerebellum. And in sensory ataxia, lack of proprioceptive input, main problem, while in motor ataxia, lack of coordination of movement, motor control is the problem. And symptoms include, in sensory ataxia, unsteady gait worsens with eye closed. This is known as the Romberg sign. That is when a person closes his eyes and he walks, he have got unsteady gait. So in case of motor ataxia, there is unsteady gait, but there are also jerky movements. and dysmetria and intention tremors. Now, what is dysmetria? Dysmetria is that the movement cannot be stopped when it reaches its point. So there is a past pointing. So this is known as dysmetria. And intention tremors are those tremors which occur where when the patient is at rest, no, there is no tremor. But when the patient starts working, for example, picking up anything or picking up a cup, so the tremors start. Now, the key signs, sensory ataxia, positive Romberg sign. This is swaying or falling with closed eyes closed. While in motor ataxia, there will be jerky or uncoordinated movements. That is ataxic gait. The difference between sensory ataxia and sensory proprioception and unconscious proprioception and conscious proprioception. This is also a question often asked. That is the anterior and posterior spinocerebellar tracts, cuneocerebellar tract. They carry the unconscious proprioception, while the dorsal column tract they carry the conscious proprioception. So, what is the difference? So then you have to tell me the difference between these two uh, terms, unconscious proprioception and conscious proprioception. So hopefully some of the concepts are cleared. Thank you.